everybody out in Manchester land, Hooksett Auburn, for the last progress report for the month of March.
First quarter's in the books.
First quarter's in the book, 2018. Tax time is coming up. April is the cruelest month. Who was it said that? T.S. Eliot. And they said April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land. What a cheery poem. But it's going to be grand, because I think we've broken the back of winter. I think we've had our last. I believe we've had the last of our northeasters.
I've still got quite a few snow piles in my yard. It's I got a lot of shade, and it's.
I'm even thinking about changing out the snow tires, taking in the bird feeder, all that stuff.
I've been thinking about getting a shovel and throwing some snow in the street, but then I would feel like I'm 89 years old. So I'm trying to resist that temptation. But the thought occurred to me several times.
Anyway, so here we are, folks, and it's a nice evening here in the great city of Manchester. We're glad to be joining you, as we do every Wednesday, with my good friend Mike Farley, except next week he won't be here because he's off leading the Hibernians, and next week I'll be here with Lou D'Alessandro, as is the case in the first Wednesday of the month. And I don't know what Lou and I are going to do, but we'll have something fun. And I wanted to say I'm very excited that the next week, April 11th, I've booked the dean at the UNH Manchester, Mike DeSalle, who's very instrumental in the Army. And for those of you that haven't been following acronyms, that's the biggest new thing. ARMI, Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute, that Dean Kamen and Mr. DeSalle and UNH have partnered with to bring here, with its substantial federal investment and substantial private investment, to begin manufacturing tissues and organs. First, in the first instance, to help our wounded veterans recover and have something better than prosthetics in that recovery, but to do lots of other great things.
And by the way, the East Coast Center for that project, there are 2 centers in the country, and one of the East Coast one is right here in Manchester.
It is.
And that is, I predict, when we heard news of that, Bob, I got excited every time you mention or anybody mentions it. I get all excited about what that bodes for the city of Manchester.
It's just huge.
Nothing but good. It could be as big as when Amoskeag came in.
Exactly.
It really could.
Exactly. And I heard from Mr. DeSalle. He was up at our committee presenting on this, and he said, there were a lot of places that wanted Dean Kamen to locate somewhere else, in one of the other technology and innovation hubs in this country. And he said, no, I want it to be in Manchester. Now we have to make it work in Manchester, which means we got to be able to bring the people here that can do this, which means we got to have means to get them here, which brings back my favorite hobby horse, the commuter rail, and other transportation modalities. But, what an exciting thing this is. I'm really looking forward to that, folks, and that'll be not next week when I'll be here with Lou, but the week after that.
Oh, so I'll get to be here. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yeah, you will be here. It's really going to be exciting.
I will study up.
And he's got some phenomenal slides to share with us on this, and it's just, and we got, it's not going to happen without a lot of effort by a lot of people, not just Dean Kamen and Mike DeSalle, but a lot of other folks are going to have to contribute to this, and government's going to have to play a role too. But in any event, before we get to our guest, Garth Corvo. Garth, thanks for joining us, and lovely to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
We know you're running for an important office, and we want to talk about that. But we are so looking forward, as we do every time you're here, Mike.
Well,
until something drastic happens, we have a different president. We have the POTUS report on the progress report.
Our somewhat regular POTUS report on the progress report, and I did miss one last week. It's been a very hectic March. Hard for me to kind of pick out the stories that I want to bring in here, but I do have something. It's just more or less of an observation, and I may throw in a bonus rant afterwards, but it depends on how much time it takes. But the reporting, and this is not really anything that hasn't been reported to a limited extent elsewhere, but you may have noticed that the president has had no public appearances since Friday. That's 5 days. And actually since the morning, so we're actually getting into close to 6 days without any public appearances by the President of the United States.
And am I right? There's been a kind of a dearth of tweets during that time?
There have been tweets, and there has been some action, but certainly there is one topic that has not been tweeted about, and it seems to be the only one of the two topics that the president has decided he is not going to address. One of those being Russia, which
Vladimir Putin in particular.
we could go into because of course the president would not condemn Russia's activities in England. I'm getting way off the subject, but then we had an enormous pushback by expelling some 66 spies and closing a consulate in Seattle. The two don't seem to match up, but the result was the result that I think was the good result. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the president being shut down. He is not able to comment. He is paralyzed by the other topic, and that was the interview on 60 Minutes of Stormy Daniels. And it's kind of funny because the basketball game before the 60 Minutes show went into overtime, and there were people on Facebook saying, I think it's some fix so that we don't see I thought that was... People, we got to back down a little bit. we can't be so hair trigger. But that's again, I'm diverging a little bit. But I do think it is remarkable that the president has not addressed this topic. His office has declined that anything ever happened, although he is a party to a lawsuit to enforce the gag order that was part of the settlement out of which it came. So that's not what I'm trying to talk about. What I'm trying to talk about is that this particular team of lawyer and person with information has succeeded by taking the Trump approach to Trump. They dangle pictures of potential video, potential tapes, like he did with Bob Mueller. They're to every page from his playbook, and it's working against him. However, there was a development. Only today, the VA secretary was canned, and
I hadn't heard that.
And again, Trump has said that he's almost at the cabinet he wants. So we can imagine that there are several more firings and rehirings that we're going to see. And I have a feeling that they're going to be strategically timed with news cycles so that they can be used as shiny object distractions from what's going on in the news cycle. The funny thing is, the VA director is being replaced by Donald Trump's personal physician, who is the physician that wrote and officially stated that Donald Trump weighs 230 pounds. So
was this the one that said he was the most wonderfully healthy?
No, not that guy. No, oh Lord, no, not God. No, this is actually a very well-respected physician. He's a real doctor. He's the White House physician. Yeah. He worked under President Obama. I have no reason to doubt his qualifications, other than there must be something wrong with his scale. Okay. I have personal reasons to know that Donald Trump weighs more than 230 pounds, and I'm just going to leave it at
reasons?
that.
Oh, my God.
Well, because I weigh 230 pounds, and he's bigger than I am.
I thought maybe you got to weigh him sometime.
I didn't want to reveal that on TV, Bob, but I have. You dragged it out of me. But that's the report. A little bit scattershot. Sorry for the lack of cohesion to it. But the point being that we do have, it seems, a team that is now able to really hold President Trump at bay and paralyze him with regard to that particular issue. And we have more of the same, the shiny object distraction. And I'm here to predict here today that I think we're going to be seeing, at critical moments, we're going to be seeing cabinet hirings or high-level official hirings and firings as he brings in more yes men.
Well, that would be more of the same then, wouldn't it?
Candidate, yeah. Now, a quick bonus rant. We have got to start calling BS on people who buy into this Fox News Republican line of reality. I heard two business owners chatting today. I overheard, and they were yucking it up about the libtards. I assume they were talking about me. I was going to say you and me, but I'll keep it personal to myself. And they were talking about such things as the census is talking. The Commerce Department's talking about adding a question to the census about citizenship.
Are you a citizen? Yeah.
Well, these two guys were totally convinced that, well, it's always been in the census, and it was Obama that took it out of the census in 2008. And what's the problem? Well, in fact, it was Eisenhower who took it out of the 100%, or at least during his administration in 52. And in 50, the question was, where were you born and are you naturalized? That is not the same question. Completely different question. So these guys, libtards like me, who know what really happened, apparently just, ought to just be quiet, because it's the fantasy world that they live in that's much more important, So, anyway.
All right, we have fun with that. Good one, Mike. Again.
I don't know if it was a good one, but it was fun.
But we have a wonderful guest with us, and it's time to introduce him.
Yeah, on to
For
the
those
serious business.
who have not previously known about him. It's Garth Corvo, who served how many terms as an alderman?
3.
3 terms representing Ward
6.
Ward 6.
Yes.
And during that time, or was it since that time, he's become married to a very wonderful and beautiful woman, Kate Corvo, and is the father of 2 children and is expecting a third. And despite all that, he's interested in being in public office again.
Boy, yeah.
How about that?
Well, yeah.
Whatever-
Trust me, my reaction's still the same.
Whatever possessed you?
A few things. It wasn't really on a radar screen. I've enjoyed my 2 years away from City Hall pretty immensely. The stress level goes down. The amount of time, quality time you can spend with your children goes up. But all that being said, since leaving City Hall in 2016, well, what else happened in 2016? A lot has happened.
Disaster.
Yeah. Our country has not changed for the better. In fact, I think most Americans would say it's changed very much for the worse.
I think so.
And
In fact, most of Americans tried to avoid it, but
Exactly.
were unsuccessful.
yeah, and thinking about my experience in politics has always been a young person trying to just bring about change, and now I'm a little older. I'm 41. There's some grays in here. But I don't want to walk away from trying to be change in the world, from that, mantra, be the change that has always inspired me, and that, then Senator Obama sort of inspired me to get involved in politics and the next year run for office and knock on wood and a lot of
the way
doors
many
won.
years before that, JFK inspired
right.
me. That was
That's
what
right.
really did it for me.
Yeah,
So I understand
and
this.
in fact, I was telling my wife just the other night how when we met on his reelection campaign, Kate managed his field
Yes, she
operation
did. She
for
was
Greater Manchester.
She was the first one here on the ground. to
She
represent
was indeed the
Obama
first one
campaign.
here on the
That's
ground.
right.
I
First
remember
met her.
meeting
Yeah.
her at the Chili Fest. We were setting
Yeah,
up
we
a
were
tent.
setting up a tent,
Sure,
yeah.
yes.
I remember that's
Yeah.
when I first met Kate Malloy, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. So she, so he inspired her too. And I was telling her last night, I was just like, boy, if you had told us in 2012, that here we are 6 years later, and we have, a 3-year-old and 2-year-old boys and another one on the way, and yet they would be growing up as a generation of protesters. I never would have imagined that just 6
Right.
years ago, let alone 2 years ago, really. But circumstances have changed in our politics, and politics has become so just nasty and not only divisive. I mean, politics has been hyper partisan for a while now, but now it's getting nasty and rude.
Almost like
And-
a civil war without actually firing
That's-
weapons.
I've heard it
that's-
referred to as a cold civil war.
That's
like
right.
we
I
had the
mean,
Cold War.
it's hard when you can't. To me, when I can't hold up the current president of the United States as a role model for my children.
Yeah.
And so knowing that this is the environment they're being raised in, to me is unacceptable. And
And you're not
and-
the kind of guy to just stand around and wait for somebody else to fix it,
yeah,
huh?
well, here's the thing, because I've seen in my time in politics and at City Hall that ultimately what makes things better is good people with good values stepping up and running for office. That's the only thing that will bring about real change for people, that'll make things better. And
it's so encouraging that you felt that push and are doing it, and you're not going to be alone. There's a whole crowd of young people. I count you as one. You may say you're 41, but that's young to me. And there's a whole crowd of young people that are anxious now to get in and do things.
I was at, I took our 2-year-old to the March for Our Lives at the State House.
Yeah, that was wonderful, wasn't it?
It was amazing. And, you know, I've been to protests before. I've been to marches before, political events, a million of them. And, you know, you can look at the crowds, and it's a big crowd. And there's always, you know, there's big crowds before. But this one, to me, felt different.
It did to me too, Garth. And I'm going to explain why I say that, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Oh, do we have some call?
We do, yep. We
Okay,
had a
let's do
caller
that.
waiting for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Hello, Austin. If you're on the air, we would love to hear from you.
What's going on, Austin?
Hello?
Oh, well.
Must have lost
Oh,
it.
well. Call back. We love our calls. Call back. We'll get you on the air.
But you were saying you
Promise.
felt it. It felt
I
different
did.
to you
And,
too.
and
yeah.
I'll just tell you, you know, I got there a little late, so I maybe missed the first speech or maybe one and a half. And then I listened to the speeches, which were wonderful. They were all,
they really
as
were.
most people know, this was all young people. This
was.
17 and under from all over the state.
It's not stopping Republicans from attacking them, though.
Of course not. but
And falsely attacking them, by the way. I mean, putting up pictures that have been photoshopped showing, kids tearing up the Bill of Rights when in fact they're tearing up shooting targets. I mean, I think that the reaction that some of these Republicans, and I'm going to say the word I said earlier in the year, these are Republicans that are doing this. And folks, you know, there are I'm sure there are very good Republicans, ordinary people that, you know, they believe that's the party.
yeah, there
but-
was one person holding a
you
sign
know-
that I really liked that says, I'm a conservative, but I think we need gun safety or something like that. I like that. And the thing that it struck me, Garth, is I watched them write, and the moderator said, well, that was our last speaker, and people didn't head for the exits.
Oh no, not at all.
They were ready
Yeah.
to hear more.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a big difference to me.
Bob,
it was.
Yes.
Austin is back on the phone. He was wondering why it was taking so long for you to
Okay,
answer.
we'll put him right
He's
on.
on line 2 now.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Austin. Whoops.
Line 2 is not on.
Austin, you there?
Nope.
Oh,
All right,
wow.
Austin, we're having a technical issue with the equipment. We're gonna have to have
Austin,
you call back and
call back.
go on to line 1, and we'll be happy to take your call.
Yeah, I'm sorry we have a technical problem, but, you know, sometimes we want to kind of finish the subject we're on before we get to our calls.
He's on line 2.
But there is no line. That phone's dead.
We don't have line 2 available.
Onward. Cancel the call.
Oh,
Tell them to call back on line 1, and we'll try and do
but
it.
yeah, that feeling I felt at that event was different than any political event I can recall. And people, you know, older than myself, you probably remember are likening it to, you know, Vietnam. To, you know, those were students, young people who were angry about what was happening in their country to them, and they stood up, they rose up, and I'm kind of amazed. You know, I'm pretty amazed by what's happening in this country.
It's
now.
really amazing.
It's not, you know, these are teenagers who went to school one day, who experienced horrific gun violence, and now they're spearheading this massive movement
Yep.
I've never seen in my lifetime. And,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
to be just a very, very small part of that, to witness it, you know, to me, it tells me that something is happening in our country and in our state where people understand the need to elect good people.
Okay, I'm thinking it might be close to break time, but here's Austin. Austin, you are live on the progress report. Go right ahead.
Yes, I just want to mention about the Manchester school system in the state of New Hampshire, which most people don't have any factual information. So I'm going to give you a bit of information. The state of New Hampshire was the last state to get kindergarten funding for the entire state.
Yes.
And then you look at UNH, was the third most expensive college in the entire country. Then you look at the state funding. The state funding is $3,450 per student, which is the lowest in the country because the average states, 49 states, fund 47% of the funding. So if you look at the 3,500, you look at Waterville Valley, and Manchester, New Hampshire is the lowest funding in the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
11,800. Okay? It is actually 4,000 per student under funding. So if you multiply times 12,000 students, you're basically almost $60-70 million. No, I'll be conservative and say $40 million under funding. Then you have the Manchester school system, which 40% of the kids are ELL, 90 countries, 40 languages, special needs, and 504. It is ridiculous. I look at the school board, and then you have Lisa Freeman, and then you have Barbara Shaw, who voted to give more money to charter schools and private schools. And the city of Manchester, they got rid of Spanish. They have cut back on the special needs thing and everything else. You know what? It is sick. It is sick the way the funding is going on. Well, we can get Trump funding all these jets. One jet could fund the entire school system 3 or 4 times. But in the state of New Hampshire, with all these idiots, the 400 legislative body that are old, and then you got people in Candia, one a 72-year-old person, I don't want to fund education anymore. All my kids are through and everything else. So what are they going to do? Every voter, they're going to say, do you have any children? Have you had any children? You don't have to pay taxes for education. You know what? We're in trouble. The downfall of every educational system has been a lack of funding and taking care of. And with all these special needs kids and 504, it is ridiculous.
Okay.
It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse.
Yep.
Statistics don't lie.
Yep.
Liars do figure. That's the accounting motto.
Yep.
Then I look at all these political figures. They have all the answers. If I have a dental problem, I go to a dentist. If I have something with myself, I go to a doctor. The politicians are deciding education. Well, most of these educators put their kids in private schools.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate or not, Curtis. Austin.
Right? You're going to give them a supplement.
I see what you're
doing. For $12,000 a year, you're going to give them a supplement. Well, what you're doing is helping the rich people to supplement an education because poor people can't
Okay.
afford
All right.
the difference.
All right, we got your point.
We're
Thanks.
going to talk over your comments. Thank
Yep.
you for the call.
I don't know if we're coming up to our break, but we could try to attack that. That's
I would just add to what
You
Austin
probably should just pass your break. It was
Okay,
about
I guess
7
we'll-
minutes ago.
Okay, thanks. I would just say, that one of the things that Mike DeSalle said, the guest we're going to have on to talk about Army, is we're going to make this work for Manchester. We need some things. We need better transportation options. That is the commuter rail. We need the education system to be perceived as excellent, and I think we're working toward that goal. So that's what I would. You want to say anything about what Austin had to say? I know you're running for a statewide office. We're
Yeah.
going to be dealing with the school budget.
Well,
here in
look,
Manchester.
I mean, yeah, I did spend 6 years on the board of mayor and alderman. Look, Manchester has one thing that the rest of the state, you probably see this more than anyone, Bob. I think the rest of the state does not understand the unique nature of not only Manchester, but especially Manchester's schools. Manchester schools are unlike any in the rest of the state. They face unique challenges that virtually none of the other schools do.
I think you're giving those legislators from outside of Manchester much more credit than they deserve.
I'm trying to be diplomatic. But
I've had the conversations.
yeah,
I think they do understand very well. and
I
they're not willing
wish
to help.
a lot of these state reps and senators from other towns would spend a day going to some of Manchester's schools. I'll put it that way. Because looking,
We have our own state reps right here in Manchester voting against state funding for all-day kindergarten, which we've been providing on our own dime for years.
we have, yeah.
Actual Republican state representatives from Manchester voted against that bill.
Yeah, yeah. It's but look, you know, in terms of growing the economy here, I mean, it really does all start with education. It really does.
It's so
and I
important.
mean, you know,
The schools not only have to be excellent, and I think we have great schools in Manchester. I really do. They have to be perceived to be excellent.
right.
And you want young people to come here that are going to start families and develop wonderful new technologies with Dean Kamen and Army. You got to have the schools that they want to have their kids be in.
That's right. And the thing is, you don't want all these great engineers and scientists and developers and whatever inventors, all of them. You don't want them to just work in Manchester.
Yeah, and live in Bedford.
Okay,
or
and live in
wherever.
Bedford and Goffstown and Merrimack.
Yeah.
Okay, that shouldn't be the standard Manchester holds itself
And, you know,
to.
regarding education, Manchester is seeing something of a renaissance in higher education, whether it's
yes.
what's going on downtown with UNH and SNHU, what's going on, what do they call it, University Square now, you know, which is a wonderful branding tool, I think. We're going to get the parking garage over at SNHU that's going to, you know, be able to accommodate infrastructure. Education is part of your infrastructure.
Sure is.
And it's part of how you sell your city.
Yeah, it's important
Absolutely.
as far as I need. Want to talk to Eddie?
We'll take Eddie on the line.
Hey, Eddie, welcome back. Nice to have you with us.
Are you there, Eddie?
Eddie.
Our technology is failing us. He's on? All right,
Okay.
let's try again.
Eddie, if you're on, please speak. No, I guess he's not. Okay. You know, I had a thought, Garth, when we were talking about that rally up in Concord we both felt was uniquely positive and uplifting, mostly because of the kids that were the program. And it was called March for Our Lives. March
For our lives, yep.
March for Our Lives.
Yeah.
That slogan could have been used in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because it was the young people there. There they were subject to the draft,
Right.
which meant you had an excellent chance of getting yourself killed or badly injured if you got selected for the draft. And at one point we went from a draft to a lottery system, but still people were being sent there involuntarily. And you know, it's sort of the same thing. These kids march for our lives because they don't feel safe in their own schools.
That's right.
That thought just occurred to me, and there's a parallel there. It's just
It's
amazing.
pretty striking.
Well, the sadness is that they're talking about in their own schools.
Yeah.
You know, at the very least,
Oh, I
we were
know.
talking about an immoral conflict overseas back, you know, and I can remember growing up as a kid, and that war just kept going on and on and on. And I'm getting older and older and older, and you know, I'm in the fourth grade, I'm having stress that I'm going to get drafted one day, you know. It was, I remember that feeling. But can I turn the conversation a little bit?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
I've heard that you've expressed an interest in running for executive council.
Well, I've declared, yes.
I would like to talk a little bit about
should
that
talk about
campaign.
Not only is there an interest, it's out there. It's
I got to ask you the first question. We've asked Chris Pappas this question many times. It's your turn now. What the heck is the executive council? And you know, tell us a little
Yep.
bit about it, because this is a test. You have to
It
know
is-
this.
Well,
before
yes,
you can run.
yes. Well, and I should say, you know, Councilor Pappas, Chris Pappas, is running for Congress. So it's
an open seat.
It is an open seat. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the first Democrat to declare. There are a couple Republicans who have declared.
Who
but-
are they, if you know?
My understanding is Alderman Lavasser and a former state rep Cormier out of Hooksett. Are the two.
Okay.
And look, there's, you know, who knows? We all hear whispers and rumors about other people on both sides that might or might not get in. You know, it's hot
we'll
stove
know at the
league
end of the
stuff.
filing period,
exactly,
right?
exactly. But so look, the executive council is actually. You know, I'm sure if you talk to a lot of state reps and state senators, they'll tell you it's incredibly important. But it's this uniquely New Hampshire constitutionally provided body that is part of the executive branch, yet it performs functions that in most other states might be considered more legislative. But the best analogy I can use to describe the executive council is it's very similar to the relationship a mayor and a board of aldermen will have, or a CEO and a board of directors will have. Essentially, the CEO, the mayor, the governor in this case, reports to this board. Essentially, the governor runs the day-to-day ship, is the chief executive, the head of the state. But there's a group of 5 counselors to whom the governor brings essentially any state contracts of $25,000 or more.
And that's a low threshold. I realize it's gone up over time, but $25,000, really? You have to look at everything?
Yes.
That's small.
Yes. It's amazing because you're dealing with contracts that are worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's like a shed.
Yeah. It's amazing.
If the state police want to buy a shed, they got to come and have you approve it.
That's probably true, yes. So they have jurisdiction over those contracts and any nominations made by the governor to head state agencies or the judiciary.
So that's like what the Senate does on the federal level. It's the advice and consent.
That's right. Very well stated. Yes. So the executive council, as I said, it's 5 members. Manchester is part of District 4, one of 19 communities.
Tough district.
It is a tough
Democrat.
It is.
It's fairly even, but I think a slight Republican advantage.
Yes, that is true. In 2010, all the districts were redrawn, and there's all sorts of really interesting districts now that may be contiguous, but the towns may have very little in common with one another. But that being said, it's Manchester, the contiguous suburbs around Manchester, and then it kind of runs sort of a little bit east and then up north into the Concord suburbs. Towns like Chichester and Epsom and Hooksett and Bow and things like that. So Hooksett borders Manchester, but what I'm saying. But it runs up into that area and even into a little bit of Stratford County. It represents one district has parts of 4 counties in it, which is also a little odd. But it's a really unique body that performs a very important function. And what I see as really important in doing that job, and what I really aspire to be, is a counselor like Chris Pappas, who basically focuses on the work, focuses on the needs of people, focuses on the job at hand, and delivers on getting results in a respectful manner. Do the job, do it well, do it respectfully.
Is it a job that lends itself to ideology, or is it a more practicality kind of a situation, in your opinion?
I believe it's really more practicality. That being said, there have been some really major political battles on the council in recent years.
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood is certainly one. Medicaid expansion is another.
Right.
Rail is another. Look, there have been some rather controversial nominations made within the last year.
Indeed, there have. Yeah.
So,
and approved.
Yes, that is true. So, very important things come before the council. Look, funding, just very recently, accepting federal funds to, for treatment and prevention programs in the opioid epidemic. Manchester just, it was held up for, a counselor who had some, gun issues, but Manchester just received police received a grant to pursue some initiatives to combat gang violence. The fact that gun violence sort of intertwines itself into gang violence became a political issue for a little bit of time on the council. So there's a lot there. And it's a job that, as I said, I look to, I hope people in Manchester can look to my record as an alderman and look at the things I've stood for. Look at my, support of public safety and public education, the pushes I've tried to make on the city level to embrace commuter rail. So there's I think I can point to a record that hopefully some people will say, yeah, that's a lot like what we hope to have, a person we hope to have representing us. Because I really do believe that the council shouldn't be this big political battleground. I mean, political battles happen in government, but it shouldn't be unnecessarily partisan. It shouldn't be, these holy wars over Planned Parenthood or Medicaid
part of the
expansion.
executive.
It is.
The function of the executive is to execute. It can't dither. It's got to get the job done.
Exactly.
That the executive was elected to do.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have any like one or two or three particular issues that you think you're going to want to kind of focus in on, or at least kind of really have an impact on?
Absolutely. I mean, I think priority number one for anyone seeking elected office should be, this opioid epidemic. In my time on the board of mayor and aldermen, you quickly learn that this isn't a public safety issue. It's not a public health issue. It's an amalgam of a lot of different things. It is a very, very complex issue. And the way to, approach that issue is to attack all the different roots of the problem to the best that you can.
Do you include
a lot of
prescribing physicians and pharmaceutical?
Well, I mean, I would.
Pain clinics.
I would say that probably not much council business would be involved on that end. Although, to be fair, an attorney general who would make decisions on going after drug makers and things of that nature, as you said.
And you'd have advice and consent on that kind
I
of
sure
decision.
would. And, that would certainly be a big, to me, I would have several questions for, if there were to be a new attorney general nomination for what are you going to do in pursuing justice in terms of this epidemic. So that's certainly one. And making sure that New Hampshire, when federal funds are apparently, going to start coming in even more, that it goes out quickly, efficiently, effectively into the hands of people who know what they're doing. I mean, we saw, Hope for New Hampshire announced they were shutting down all their locations.
Yeah,
except
and as the crisis is
Manchester.
continuing and ongoing,
That's right.
that just was really distressing. And
Well, I mean, they were overtaxed. I mean, they needed help.
Yeah.
They needed help, and fortunately,
And
it
that-
looks
that's-
like maybe they're going to get it. I
Hopefully,
hope it's what they
yeah.
need.
I mean, knock on wood. I mean, I think that, you're seeing in the communities all these people. People are standing up and saying, we need help. We this isn't something that's just going away. It's it's only growing.
And the city of Manchester needs help to address
Oh,
this.
especially, absolutely.
I mean, more than any other community in the state, I think we need help because
Yeah.
we do offer services. It means we get the people here
That's right.
and they don't bring resources with them.
Yep.
And
That's
that's
absolutely
something
right.
I hope as a councilor you can help with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we saw, the Safe Station program. I believe it was somewhere right around 40 or 50% of people who would go to these, the fire stations weren't from Manchester.
We're from Manchester.
Yeah, but and
Because
they
we have
would
the program.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden, now there's debates at City Hall about should we pay for Uber rides or seek some
Yeah.
sorts of
Yeah.
impose
That's,
fees.
you
and-
don't have the Uber ride, you lose the patient.
Yeah.
And, you have to. That's part of the continuum of care that you have to apply.
Yeah, so there's so many facets to this issue, but look, making progress on it, priority number one for me.
Yep.
Second, Look, it actually ties into the opioid epidemic to an extent, but the expansion, of Medicaid,
Continuing that.
absolutely. That, by the way, uniquely benefits Manchester.
It does. I can't believe we have members of our delegation in the House of Representatives representing parts of Manchester that are not in favor of this. I just don't. It's just shocking to me.
It's just
Talk about you should vote your constituency. I don't understand it.
weighing pros and cons. Simply doing that, removing your ideological lenses, is a no-brainer. But yet, we fight battles on it. It seems like every couple of years.
Yeah. And that's because we had a sunset provision in the last one.
Yeah.
As we do
Well,
in the current bill.
to
but
get it
it's-
passed.
And-
Sometimes that's the kind of compromise that people talk about when they say, why can't legislatures compromise?
Yeah.
That was a compromise. It was a good one.
That's right.
It got it passed. Okay, now we have another battle.
Yeah.
We'll find a way to get through the next.
Third, also in terms of health care, ensuring Planned Parenthood can do its job. Planned Parenthood's this, politically, you're either for it or against it, but, they look at, so many people only look at Planned Parenthood through the lens of abortion. But what Planned Parenthood does, that's such a small percent,
they provide
fraction of what they
Basic health care for women.
Absolutely.
Most of whom cannot afford other
That's right,
kinds of care.
and men, by the way. I mean, mostly women, but look, the services they provide are basic and needed in communities for people who don't have a lot of money to spend, who can't have, a primary care doctor on call. Look, that's an important priority of mine too. We talked about ideological nominees. And by the way, not only just ideological nominees, but unqualified nominees. You put ideological plus unqualified, and what's happening in the public schools right now on the state level is you're seeing the results of that. And finally, rail.
We should take a break.
Want to take a quick break before?
We blew through one break because
I'm exhausted. I need a break, Bob.
We can take a quick break, and we will do that because we usually do that on the show. This will be our only break, and we'll be back with our final segment in just a very short time. So we'll be right back with Garth Corvo, an announced candidate for Executive Council District 4, which includes Manchester. Be right back.
That was.
Hey, we're back, everybody. This is the progress report for the last Wednesday in the month of March 2018.
Rejuvenated after that break. I was getting tired. I feel better. I feel like I've been back to the
long,
corner.
Tough day in Concord for me. I needed a quick shot of something here. And we're ready to go on with Garth Corvo. served 3 terms as a Manchester alderman representing Ward 6, and he's decided to throw his hat into the ring for the now about to be vacant Executive Council seat in District 4, which has been occupied very ably by Chris Pappas, who's going to Congress, perhaps, seeking to. And so he would be the next executive councilor to represent Manchester and many of the surrounding towns, and some towns that are not so close to Manchester, if this all works out. And we're having a fine time learning about what makes him tick. But in that regard, Garth, here you are, young guy in my eyes, young family and about to be enlarged.
Bragging about all that gray hair you got.
It's coming in, and I know when baby 3 comes in, there's going to be more salt and pepper.
It must be quite a thing to take on something. This is a demanding job. I mean, you meet on Wednesdays, but there's a heck of a lot of paperwork and a lot of decisions. How are you going to be able to do it and keep things going for yourself and your family?
Look, when I started getting calls about this, asking me to consider it, I really didn't start making calls to people in politics until very recently. Most of my talk was, with my wife and my work colleagues. But, when we talked about it, it really did, again, just come down to values. Because, look, I'm a father, 3 and 2-year-old sons, another on the way. My life at home is crazy and chaotic and amazing and beautiful. You know what I mean? So, I embrace that loving chaos, and I always will. So, but outside of that, I also, to me, it's important to be an example to my children and to young people, to at least say I tried to make things better. And Kate absolutely feels the same way too. And when it became very clear that we had to make a decision on this, she was really incredible. She just said, "You know what? This is something I think you really need to do." And and she was just like, we
that's
can.
Wonderful.
Yeah, she said, we'll make things work. As I said, we just have this wonderfully loving, chaotic life together as a family. And in terms of the work, look, that's really where I did my due diligence. It's like, look, can I do this job? Talking with people who've done this job, who've served on the council. And that's when it really became apparent to me that, look, in a lot of ways, being an executive counselor is like being an alderman. It's just, rather than the city level, it's the state level. It's still contracts.
That package is
the package is bigger. Yes, the package is bigger. Although, I'll tell you this, the more I looked at it, I was like, wait, we don't have to vote on a budget, though. Yeah. That takes up, once that budget comes out, that's an alderman's job, for months. So you actually don't have to do that as an executive counselor. But you're right. But in terms of the work of, meeting and vetting nominations, of reviewing and taking action on contracts, look, my job is primarily as a business law attorney. I spend most of my days looking at contracts.
You kind of like doing that?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly different for, government or procurement from small businesses, but, it's work that I know I can do. And once that became apparent, I got that push from the family to give it a go, it struck me as, and then just what we were talking about, just the nature of what's happening right now in our country and in our state and communities. I wouldn't do this. Like the easy thing to do is to not get in the arena. That's the easy thing to do.
Right.
It's really funny. I'm reminded of a few weeks just gone by. When he says that.
It's the easy thing. Yeah. Look, I've won and lost.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to do my best, and if elected, I'm going to treat this with the utmost seriousness because I'm taking an oath to do so. But look, at the end of the day, winning and losing a campaign, winning feels a lot better. There's no question.
Indeed it does.
But I really believe that I can do the job well, or else I wouldn't do it. There have been offices I've thought about running before, and I came to the conclusion it's not the right time for me or my family or the community, that sort of thing. This did feel different. This felt like I can do my best to fill Chris Pappas's shoes.
Oh, good.
So I believe I can do it. I wouldn't try if I didn't think I could.
If someone wanted to help out with your campaign, have you set up a website yet? Do you have a Facebook
Yes.
page? What are you doing?
All of the above. Thank you for asking.
So you really are running, aren't you?
Well, yeah. Well, as of tomorrow, it's
I'm pulling
been
your
a
leg.
week,
I'm pulling
but,
your leg.
Yeah.
So how do you put it out there?
Yes,
How do people reach you?
So GarthCorvo.com. You can sign up, get involved, get our emails, stay up to date on the campaign, learn, in a little more detail some of my positions on the issues, a little bit more about me, my biography, and what I stand for. I think that's important. People know your values. So much of serving in government isn't really about your intellect. It's about your judgment. It's about your values. So if you go to GarthCorvo.com, I think you'll learn a lot more about me. Garth Corvo for Executive Council on Facebook as well, and I'm on Twitter at Garth Corvo. So
And folks could feel free to send you a donation.
absolutely, yeah. Go to GarthCorvo.com.
I know it's hard to ask for money. I figured I'd throw
That's
that
right.
out there
No,
for
thank you. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, we're up on Act Blue, Garth Corvo for Executive Council, and off our website and Facebook page, you'll find links as well.
At this point,
So.
do you have a campaign manager?
We do not. It's only been a week. We do have a campaign chair. Alderman O'Neill is chairing our campaign.
Very good.
I can say that the feedback in the last 6 days has the reception's been so great. So I think, in the coming days and weeks, you're going to hear there are a lot of people who have lined up to support us, which is amazing. It's an amazing feeling to put yourself out there and
the
have
history
people.
we've had here in New Hampshire and across the nation is very encouraging for people that are running on the Democratic side of the ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, the special elections we've had in
Get your surfboard out.
Manchester
There could be
has
a wave. Huh?
been very telling.
Can't
We
count on
hope
it.
so.
You got to do the work.
Oh, you got to
do
do
the
the
work.
work.
You
You
gotta
got
do
to
the
do.
work.
That's yes.
But it's motivating. It helps you do the work to feel that there's a wave there that can, if you get your surfboard ready and practice, you can do it.
Yeah, look, it's just going to be so imperative whether it's governor, Congress, Executive Council, State Senate, and Rep. It's just going to be so important that people take this election seriously, that
I
they
think
go
they
out
will.
and vote.
And by the way, vote the bottom up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't start at the top. Start down at the bottom.
As someone
Vote
who's
the
been
bottom
on the
up.
bottom, I can absolutely
Vote the bottom up.
attest to that,
Democrats
yes.
are notorious for the drop off after the top of
Yes,
the ticket.
that's right.
We are worse than independents and we are worse than Republicans in that. So Democrats, when you go to vote, start at the bottom. That way it guarantees you're going to fill out all the circles you need to fill. So
That's true.
That's something I'm going to be saying all
great
year
point.
long for Democrats.
Yeah.
Vote the bottom up.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Bottoms up.
Well,
It's still March. It's St. Patrick's Day month in Manchester.
Well, we like to celebrate.
That's
we
right.
Like, we like to celebrate. Well, it sounds really good, Garth, and we certainly wish you well.
Thank you.
Glad you could join us here.
Thank you for
I
having
think
me.
you've talked a little bit about you're going to definitely support Medicaid expansion.
Absolutely.
Which is something that has got to be accomplished in this legislative session, so I hope it'll all be done by the time you
I do
take
too.
the oath of office as executive counselor. And there's a lot of other issues we could talk to you about, and we'd like to do it, but I guess we're pretty much out of time.
Plenty of time between now
We'll have
and
you back.
November.
We'll have you
yeah.
back for,
Thank
for
you.
a
And
sequel.
consider that an invitation you can take
Thank
up
you.
when the occasion is right
Thank
for you.
you very much.
We'd like to do that. So once again, folks, we hope you've enjoyed this hour with Garth Corvo, an outstanding candidate. He's been a wonderful public servant. He's going to run for a different office, Executive Council. I'll be back. Mike will not be here next week. I'll be back with Lou D'Alessandro and we'll have something interesting, I
so.
promise. And then the week after that, we're very excited to welcome back Mike DeSalle, the dean at UNH Manchester, to talk about the Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute, the most exciting economic development and growth potential for the city of Manchester in decades, I think. And we're really excited about that. And with that, everybody have yourself a lovely Wednesday evening, and the Red Sox open tomorrow. Go Sox!
That's right.
Spring is here. The Sox are in action tomorrow for real.
Tune in next
Down
week,
in
folks.
Florida. So enjoy that, and we'll see you next week. Bye.